What does a person really buy when they donate billions of dollars? A clear conscience, a good reputation, protection for their power, or a truly better world? A person donates billions of dollars throughout their life. And while doing all of this, they become even richer. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? Because for years we have been taught the same thing. If you give money away, you will have less of it. Generosity is a sacrifice, and those who give the most lose the most. But some people in history managed to do the exact opposite. And the most famous, most complex, and perhaps most misunderstood of them was John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller was not only the world's first dollar billionaire. He was also the architect of the modern system of philanthropy. He created a system so powerful that, even more than a century after his death, some of the world's most influential foundations still use the model he developed. For subscribers who have recently become interested in financial history, let's first talk briefly about John D. Rockefeller. Born in a small town in New York in 1839, John Davison Rockefeller was not born into a wealthy family. His father, William Rockefeller, was a traveling salesman and sometimes a fraud who sold fake medicines. He often stayed away from home for weeks. During one of these periods away from home, he had children with another woman. Then one day he returned to his first family together with this second family. Both families ended up living together. When his family moved to Cleveland, John was only 16 years old. He left high school and started working as an assistant bookkeeper. His daily wage was 50 cents. But the plans in his mind were much bigger. Within a few years, he started his own commodity brokerage company. In its first year, the company generated $500,000 in sales. He was only 18 years old. Every bank in Cleveland wanted to lend him money. But the real turning point came in 1859. About 150 kilometers east of Cleveland, something important had happened in Pennsylvania. America's first commercial oil well had been opened, and nothing would ever be the same again. At that time, oil did not have the same importance it has today. Gasoline-powered cars had not yet been invented. But kerosene made from oil was used in lamps. And lamps were lighting homes and workplaces all across America. Demand for oil exploded. But the market was chaotic. Everyone was looking for oil. Everyone was drilling. Prices doubled one day and fell by half the next. Those who found oil became rich, while those who failed lost everything. John watched this situation carefully. Then he made a decision. I will not drill for oil. Searching for oil was no different from gambling. You either found it or you didn't. But refining oil was different. No matter how unstable crude oil prices were, someone had to process it. And if you could build a monopoly in refining, you could write the rules of the game yourself. In 1863, he and his partners opened their first refinery. In 1870, he took the step that would make history. Standard Oil of Ohio was officially established. To understand Standard Oil, we need to realize that we are not talking about just a company. Standard Oil created a system. It bought its competitors. Those it could not buy, it crushed through price wars. It made secret agreements with railroad companies. In exchange for guaranteeing the transport of 60 rail cars per day, it reduced its shipping cost to far below what its competitors were paying. And that was not all. It arranged deals that allowed it to receive not only the discounted rate it paid, but also a portion of what its competitors paid. As a result, income generated from its rivals flowed directly into Rockefeller's own accounts. In other words, Rockefeller's competitors were not only fighting against him, they were also helping to finance that fight. This system was called the rebate mechanism. And at that time, it was completely legal. In the first 3 months of 1872, Rockefeller either bought, shut down, or forced into bankruptcy 22 of his 26 competitors in Cleveland. Journalists of the time called it the Great Cleveland Massacre. By 1880, Standard Oil was refining 90% of America's oil. It owned thousands of miles of pipelines across the country. It had tens of thousands of employees. Rockefeller had built an organization that looked more like a government than a company. From the late 1880s onward, Rockefeller was no longer only a major figure in business. He had become a major figure in public debate as well. and the public did not like him. In cartoons, he was almost always drawn the same way, as a giant octopus, its arms wrapped around refineries, pipelines, railroads, banks, and even the Congress building. Then Ida Tarbell arrived. Tarbell was not an ordinary journalist. Her father had been a small oil producer in Pennsylvania. He had gone bankrupt because of Rockefeller's pricing tactics. For that reason, Tarbell saw the issue not only as a professional matter, but also as a personal one. The investigative series published in McClure's magazine between 1902 and 1904 shocked America. After years of research, Tarbell exposed Standard Oil's internal operations, secret agreements, and political connections. Her language was not academic. It was sharp and easy to understand. Every time a new chapter was published, people across America discussed it. Rockefeller did not say a single word during this period. He did not speak to the press. He made no public statements. He offered no defense. He simply waited. And perhaps during this period, something started to change in his mind. In 1911, the United States Supreme Court announced its decision. Standard Oil had violated monopoly laws. It had acted against the Sherman Antitrust Act. The company would be divided into approximately 34 independent companies. The newspapers of the time declared this to be the end of Rockefeller. But it was not the end, because Rockefeller remained a shareholder in all of those companies. And as investors realized that the separated companies were worth far more than expected, the value of the shares began to rise. The government had broken up the monopoly on paper, but in practice, Rockefeller had become even richer. Today, ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, and many other energy giants can trace their roots back to this breakup. And Rockefeller's shares in these companies continued to increase in value until his death. This picture reveals a clear reality. Philanthropy had not reduced his wealth. His wealth had simply changed into another form. But the Rockefeller Foundation, established in 1913, was not only a financial move, or at least it did not want to appear that way. The Rockefeller Foundation focused on three main areas: public health, education, and scientific research. And to be honest, the Foundation's achievements were real. They can neither be ignored nor underestimated. It directly contributed to the development of vaccines for meningitis and yellow fever. The first modern medical school in China was established with Rockefeller funding. Public health research at Johns Hopkins and Harvard was supported by these funds. Campaigns were organized around the world to fight diseases such as hookworm, malaria, and typhus. Then came the Green Revolution. Beginning in the late 1940s, Rockefeller Resources financed agricultural research, especially in Mexico and Asia. High-yield seed varieties were developed. Irrigation systems were built. Modern farming methods became more widespread. Some researchers estimate that this revolution saved more than 1 billion people from starvation. Think about that. 1 billion people. Does the debate about philanthropy become meaningless when faced with a number like that? Maybe. But the story is not over yet. Whenever the Foundation's activities are examined, an interesting pattern appears. The direction of its donations often overlaps with America's geopolitical interests. After World War II, the danger of communism spreading across Europe had reached a very high level. France in particular had a strong left-wing movement. And during this period, the Rockefeller Foundation began supporting French educational institutions, economic policies, and intellectual circles. Development projects were financed in Latin America. But a significant number of these projects also helped shape those countries' economies in ways that suited American companies. People connected to the foundation were placed in international organizations. Global health policies increasingly began to develop within frameworks supported by the foundation. Critics put forward the following argument: the Rockefeller Foundation is not a charity. It is the longest-term instrument of power created by private capital. It does good things, but those good things also serve certain interests. This claim has never been fully proven, but it is not completely without basis either. And that is why the Rockefeller Foundation is still debated today. It is both defended and criticized. It is viewed with both admiration and suspicion. Economists and sociologists have been studying this issue for decades, and the concept known as strategic philanthropy has become increasingly accepted. According to this concept, large donations are not made only to help others. Transferring assets into a foundation can dramatically reduce the tax burden on those assets. Rockefeller was one of the pioneers of this system. The foundation model he created is now used by organizations ranging from the Gates Foundation to major foundations all around the world. Let's make the numbers more concrete. Rockefeller did not pay the taxes that he would have paid on the assets transferred to his foundations. The money remained inside institutions that were under his influence. The name had changed, but the real control largely remained the same. During the Standard Oil era, Rockefeller was one of the most hated men in America. During the last 40 years of his life, however, he became one of the most respected. This transformation did not happen by itself. Philanthropy is one of the most powerful tools for building a reputation in history. When you hear the name Rockefeller today, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Most likely a famous philanthropist or the Rockefeller Foundation, not the practices of Standard Oil. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of a long-term narrative. A government can stop a company, a court can break up a monopoly, but a foundation operates in a different arena. A foundation funds research. Research creates ideas. Ideas influence policymakers. Policymakers shape laws. And this cycle can continue for decades. No one can accuse a foundation of being a profit-driven monopoly, because a foundation is not seeking profit. A foundation is doing good. And who can oppose someone who is doing good? At this point, I would like to ask you something. As viewers of this video, what do you think? Can philanthropy carried out with great wealth be genuine? Or is there always a calculation behind it? Let's meet in the comments. Journalist Ida Tarbell once described him as one of the saddest men in the world. He had developed alopecia. His hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes had completely fallen out. His skin was pale. His digestive system had largely collapsed. For decades, he was able to eat little more than milk and crackers. The photographs of the man who looked 56 years old actually belonged to someone much older. Most doctors said that he would not live a long life. But Rockefeller lived for 97 years. And during this period, his personality changed. Or at least it seemed that way. Every morning he went to church. He gave money to people in need. He spoke with strangers. He treated the people around him kindly. And one day he said, "The greatest mistake of my life was that I did not learn to give before I learned to earn." Think about that statement. Was it sincere? Probably, at least partly. But at the same time, it was also part of a very carefully constructed narrative. After all, by the time those words were published, the foundation had already been established. The transformation of his reputation had already begun. Pointing this out is not about diminishing Rockefeller. It is simply about seeing the complete picture. Rockefeller died in 1937. He was 97 years old. The figures regarding his fortune tell an interesting story. In 1912, his wealth was estimated at around $900 million. At the time of his death, however, only $26 million remained for his heirs. Everything else had flowed into foundations, universities, and various institutions. These numbers are real. And when faced with this reality, it is difficult to simply say, it was all strategy. Because strategy is one thing, while a lifelong commitment is another. The Rockefeller Foundation is still active today. It runs programs around the world with a budget worth billions of dollars. It works in areas such as climate change, food security, global health, and economic development. And the roots of these efforts can be traced back to the original model established by Rockefeller. Why is it so important to understand Rockefeller's model? Because this model is everywhere today. Bill Gates, 20 years ago, was the founder of one of the world's most criticized technology monopolies. Microsoft was fighting antitrust lawsuits. Gates was seen as the architect of an unmatched monopoly. Then came the Gates Foundation. Today, Gates is one of the most influential figures in global health. He helps shape global vaccine policies. He funds agricultural research. He tries to transform education systems. Has his wealth decreased? No. Every year he donates more, and every year he becomes even richer. Look at Warren Buffett. He is donating most of his fortune to the Gates Foundation. Yet he remains on the list of the richest people in the world. Look at Jeff Bezos. While debates continue about Amazon's environmental impact and workers' rights, he continues to expand his philanthropic initiatives. You see the same pattern in all of them. Great wealth, great criticism, great philanthropy, and great influence. This is not a coincidence. It is a model, and Rockefeller was the inventor of that model. To understand Rockefeller, we need to stop trying to define him with a single label. The question, was he a good man or a bad man, is the wrong question. Because the truth is that Rockefeller was the system itself. He was both a figure who created that system and a product of it. The damage caused by the monopoly he built during the Standard Oil era was real. His methods of driving competitors out of business were ruthless. His manipulations in the political sphere have been documented. But at the same time, the scientific contributions that came from the research institutions he established were real. The lives saved by the health campaigns he funded were real. The hunger prevented by his contribution to the Green Revolution was real. These two realities can exist at the same time. And perhaps the most uncomfortable truth is this: good intentions and self-interest do not always have to stand against each other. Sometimes both exist at the same time, in the same hands. But we do know one thing: the system he created is still working today. The foundation model he established is still being used today. The institutions he left behind are still standing today. And 100 years later, we are still discussing his story. This is not only a story about money and philanthropy. It is also a story about power, legacy, and what human beings want to become.